Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Percy, and I'll be hosting the show today. Up here, satellite imagery showing basically storm-free conditions here over the interior of Alaska, although some strong northerly winds that were farther to the west yesterday have shifted eastward today and picked up the winds pretty good through Cook Inlet, down across Kodiak Island and Prince William Sound, where Valdez seeing gusts 75 miles per hour, had a high wind warning out. And that wind warning will be out until 6 p.m. Friday evening, this evening, for those gusts to continue up to about 75 miles per hour, then gradually diminish. Along the southeast coast, still low pressure off the coast. So that continues, as you can see, to circulate moisture right on into the area there. Rain lower elevations, rain mixed with snow as you move inland and with any elevation at all, to mostly some snow up to the north there. And the main one front pushing through. Might have another one developing back here that'll come in tonight. Now keep conditions wet in that area. Some of that moisture sneaking back to the west-northwest across Whitehorse there and north of the mountains into the Wrangles, and some very light snow, say around Northway, and actually some flurries extending also into the Fairbanks area, as well as along the Alaska Range, mostly north and then west, but just very light snow flurries. That's about it. Also up in the Koyukuk Valley, Bettles reporting a little bit of light snow today, but a more widespread area of light snow here north of the Berks Range, across the north slope to the Arctic coast, with a very weak trough kind of dropping south and southeast there. Otherwise clear and cold here over the interior. And again, the windy conditions over Cook Inlet today, with very strong winds coming across Kodiak Island. Less wind here over the Alaska Peninsula, but you can see very tight gradient here along the North Gulf Coast, and that brought those strong winds to the Valdez area. And also looking at the winds increasing here off to the east over the northern panhandle, especially northern Lynn Canal. Now out over the Bering Sea, we've got a pretty active front trying to push eastward here, but most of this energy is going northward. That brought some good rain and fog into the western Aleutians today, almost making it over to Adak. Otherwise, to the west, we have this warm front type weather sliding southeastward, and warmer air pushing northward there, kind of recurving around. So we got some rain showers occurring at Unalaska today, where the winds were much lighter than yesterday. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula, kind of a mixed rain and snow pattern developing there. Back up to the Pribilofs, and then some areas of light snow sliding southeastward here along the southwest coast there to maybe Togiak Bay, and almost up to about the St. Lawrence Island area, but that's pretty light in the way of snow there. Otherwise, moving on to the forecast for tonight, this front continues to move kind of east-northeastward here. It makes a little bit of a jog to the east, so that's definitely going to put St. Lawrence Island in more wind, rain, or more wind, snow becoming mixed with rain as that warmer air continues to ride northward on those southerly winds. Could start out with some blowing snow possibly later on tonight. A little more likely maybe through the Bering Strait, but just to the east there, really just looking at some clouds. And then areas of clearing, and those will be the coldest areas tonight over interior Alaska. Going to hang on to that cloudy condition with some light snow and flurries along and north of the Alaska Range. Probably not too extensive around Nicolai and McGrath, but definitely here on the north side, again, maybe in Anana. Fairbanks continue to have some flurries tonight, and on down toward Northway and Tok. You can see still a very tight gradient here along the coast range of the North Gulf Coast, on into the northern panhandle there. So strong outflow wind associated with that, and that'll keep enough cold air in for whatever moisture remains or moves northward over that cold air will be in the form of snow, especially toward the eastern border. More of a mixed rain and snow pattern again, like we've seen there over the southeast coast. Looks like another front may develop here, and of course that's going to keep it wet with that southeast flow going as this low center remains off to the west. Otherwise, with offshore flow, mostly clear skies, and again, winds diminishing slowly overnight tonight across Prince William Sound. Also, the winds coming down Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, in those areas, and continue to diminish the winds for the Alaska Peninsula. This ridge axis moving into the area right across Togiak Bay and western Bristol Bay into the interior. Very light winds with clearing. Again, could be some areas of patchy low clouds and fog forming, and then the light snow continues with that weak and stationary trough up there over the north slope in the Arctic coast. More significant, maybe a little bit, could pick up maybe half an inch possibly or so on the east side there, but just flurries back to the west. And this system, again, weak warm front keeps a chance of some moisture mixed, possibly just all rain here for the Alaska Peninsula. As the rain area advances eastward to almost Nikolsky by tomorrow morning, next system out here to the west really starts to crank up. And you can see from 985 millibars to tomorrow morning, or I'm sorry, Saturday afternoon, it's down to 964 millibars here, just north of roughly AKwx or northwest of AKwx, and very strong north winds coming around the backside of that, definitely storm force out of the northwest, hurricane force there in the southern quadrant of that system, and then some good gales and storms coming up into the western Aleutians in advance of the main low center, and wind and rain, possibly heavy at times here, moving eastward across the eastern Aleutians, and warmer temperatures surging northward on those winds. So rain pushing up across the Pribilofs to Nunivak Island. Look for mixed rain and snow for the St. Lawrence Island area with the original front right through here. Still a chance of some blowing snow, possibly through the Bering Strait northward. But cuts right off, say around Teller, not quite making it to Nome. It'll be right on the edge there, as well as Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. Another fair day over the interior. Cold temperatures, 1,027 millibar high, holding just near Eagle, more or less there. But you can see a lot less gradient, so a more significant decrease in the winds here for Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast. A lot less wind for Cook Inlet, south central Alaska, particularly Resurrection Bay, where they saw gusts to about 50 knots today earlier, and Seward, so less wind in those locations. Still kind of windy and snowy up here over the northern panhandle. Mixed conditions down to the south. Again, this low hanging off the coast there, and another trough, or actually that front kind of weakening, keeping the clouds and moisture in over that area, but it doesn't look like as much will circulate back to the northwest, but probably see some clouds there, but not much in the way of any precipitation. And then the outlook for Sunday, this system mostly makes a jog to the east here. The low center pretty intense, 946 millibars traveling due east right over the Pribilofs. Strong northwest, turn west, and then southwest winds coming right on into Bristol Bay, with that front extending eastward, bringing increasing chances of rain and snow into southern Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula. Could be some snow, overrunning snow, work into the northern Cook Inlet area, possibly Prince William Sound, especially on the west side. Less of a chance over toward, or a lot less of a chance for Valdez and Cordova, and dry over the Copper River Basin. Just a few clouds now up into the central Tanana Valley area. Dry and cold in those locations. Right out to the Arctic coast, may push that light flurry condition there actually off the coast a little bit with any luck at all on Sunday. And otherwise, the southeast coast, low center kicking inland now, so may result in some drier conditions, especially up here to the north and probably down to the south as well, as the bulk of the moisture gets kicked inland ahead of this system, pushing eastward. Really narrow ridge of high pressure will be rolling in advance of that to help in the precipitation there. And for lows tonight, quite cold here, anywhere from 20 to 30 below eastern interior from the Copper River Basin up across the Yukon Flats, back to just a shade above zero on the Arctic coast, and below zero down to the Kuskokwim Valley. Single numbers south central Alaska to upper 20s for Kodiak Island, and teens northern southeast coast, lower 30s to the south, and 40s out over the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, trying to push up toward 50. Call it mid to upper 40s out here for Unalaska and Adak. Markedly cooler, though, into Bristol Bay. Highs in the lower teens. That's 11 at King Salmon. Below zero here at Copper River Basin and north of the Alaska Range, of course, across the eastern interior, all the way up to about Arctic Village. And milder, mid to upper 20s for the Seward Peninsula, and teens, 20s, and 30s for the Panhandle. Lows Sunday morning, again pretty cold. Tanana Valley now dropping to 25 to 30 below. That'll probably extend over to Northway and Tok, depending on the cloud cover, and minus 20s up to the north with continued milder temperatures out along the west coast, and teens to upper 20s for the Panhandle, where the Aleutians will be well above freezing.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, starting along the southeast coast, marginal VFR slipping up to the north in that kind of a south-southeast flow there, so not quite reaching the northern areas yet. VFR across much of interior Alaska from the Gulf all the way up until you get to the north slope. Look for some IFR. Central coast, patchy areas IFR due to low clouds and fog over the interior valleys. And out to the west, big area IFR out here with that next intense storm coming into the Bering Sea there, or actually just south of the Aleutians. And we'll see by tomorrow afternoon, that makes a pretty good jog to the northeast here up toward the coast, just reaching Nunivak Island, definitely in across the Pribilof, southward here to the Fox Islands, to the Alaska Peninsula with good VFR remaining over interior Alaska, Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound. We still have those patchy areas of low clouds and fog, giving some patchy IFR in the interior valleys. And this may slip all the way up into the northern southeast coast tomorrow afternoon. It's kind of iffy there, but that flow could be, maybe it'll just be VFR clouds. Anyway, moving on to the Sunday morning forecast. It pulls up to the coastline, then kind of runs into some kind of wall here right along the coast. IFR narrows, starts to push through underneath here in toward Kodiak Island. No change over the interior. Still the threat of some IFR there along the west central Arctic coast, but that'll be mostly offshore. And marginal VFR now hugging the central and south coastline there into the Gulf of Alaska. So looking pretty good there Sunday morning for the southeast coast. And then for Sunday afternoon, this area slips eastward, definitely covering Kodiak Island up into southern Cook Inlet now. And some marginal VFR may find its way into northern Cook Inlet, eastward increasing across Prince William Sound during the afternoon Sunday. Otherwise, no change over the interior. Marginal VFR, Arctic coast and up to St. Lawrence Island. Just a patch of that over the southeast coast. And then some marginal VFR to the eastern Aleutians and also back out to the west. So passes shaping up like this. And the Tuvac-Anavigan look VFR tomorrow. And Lake Clark, Merrill, rainy, all VFR in the forecast, windy as well. Eastern Alaska Range, Isabel, Mentasta, VFR, and for Tanita, VFR with Portage, VFR as well. Chilkoot and White, VFR to start with. You may go marginal at times, especially in the afternoon hours, but that's just a chance at this point. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here from about Sitka, and then a little bit higher than that down to Dixon Entrance at the surface to the north. Of course, cold air surface here across all interior Alaska with that intense storm coming into the picture here, and those strong winds pushing warmer air, definitely 8,000 to 10,000 feet, 6,000 feet up to the Pribilofs, and at the surface all the way up into the Russian Far East again. Icing could be some areas of considerable moderate rime icing moving into the eastern Aleutians and the western Alaska Peninsula. Also another batch out there to the west, and big area icing possible across much of the Bering Sea, and a chance of some icing over the southeast coast. Jet stream ridging, pushing eastward here, so it's going to keep the interior clear and cold. Still northwest 80 knots there coming across Kodiak Island, but lighter up over the interior. And now this southwest jet south of the Panhandle, and very strong jet out here to the west, 170 knots. 9,000 foot wind flow showing with that storm coming up. Very strong winds, 55 to 75 knots. Strongest remaining south of the Aleutians. And then southerlies 30 to 40, diminished to 20 to 30 over the northern Bering Sea. Light through the ridge axis. And then we've got northerly flow here, kind of a narrow band just on the east side of this ridge, still 30 to 50 knots coming down out of, well, across Kachemak Bay, the Aleutian Range, on down across Kodiak Island, and then 30 knots just off the coast there. Anywhere from 20 to 30 knots here across the Kenai Peninsula, but lighter as you move northward, just 5 to 10 over the interior. And then with this low here off the southeast coast, 25 knot winds, a narrow band again right along the coast, turn easterly, maybe up to 30, and then lighter over toward the border. 3,000 feet, those could be 25 to 35 knots there, but again in a narrow band, otherwise just 5 knots over the Panhandle. 20 to 30 knot winds from the north here, coming out of Cook Inlet, right across Kodiak Island. Lighter winds at the ridge, reversing direction, strong out here, 45 to 55 knots coming into the western Aleutians. And then northerlies up to 40 behind that. And turbulence could be severe turbulence, especially for small aircraft here over the western and central Aleutians.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things, coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the Northern Lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the Northern Lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you are lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis showing some ice actually having blown south off the coast there in Kuskokwim Bay a little bit there, and probably to a lesser extent up here in southern Norton Sound, but just a gradual increase here over yesterday throughout all these areas up to the western North Slope. And also Cook Inlet had a shift southward of the ice due to the gusty north winds that blew in last night and during the day today. Marine forecast here for the southeast coast. South winds pretty stiff there, 30 knots, southeast 30 knots with gusts to 45 knots, and then good gales on up to the north coast, turning a little more easterly up here on the extreme north coast. Northern Link Canal, again, that very tight gradient sending up across that area. North 40, gusts 55 knots. North 30, gusts 45 knots for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait southeast at 25 with roughly 5-foot seas. And then for Sunday, those come down. North 15 with 3-foot seas there for Clarence Strait. North 20 on the south coast, falling back to northwest 15 here. So much lighter winds now for the southeast coast coming up on Sunday. Easterlies at 20, 7 to 8-foot seas. Holding on to those gales and storm force gusts, though, for Northern Link Canal with 7-foot seas, and good small craft advisories there for Stevens Passage. Prince William Sound tomorrow, small craft advisories, north 25, higher gusts out of the bays, 6-foot seas, but winds coming down considerably here across Prince William Sound during the day tomorrow. Still looking at north 25, gusts 50 knots early on for the North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories to the west turn into gales again for the Barren Islands, and northwesterly gales for Kachemak Bay. Cook Inlet, north 30-knot winds continue with 8-foot seas. And then for Sunday, those come down, especially northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 20, northeast 30 here, southern Cook Inlet across Kachemak Bay, and southeast 20 for the Barren Islands. Easterlies 20 to 25 here for the North Gulf Coast, strongest over to the east there with 8-foot seas. Northeast 15 now coming down for Prince William Sound. And for Kodiak Island, northwest winds from Shelikof Strait right across the island there to the east side at 30 knots, seas up to 12 feet. And then 30-knot winds here extend down to about Castle Cape or so, or maybe Chignik. Then they swing around to the south, same speed, seas at about 7 feet. Gales, southeasterly gales now on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Bristol Bay, east at 20, but big increase in the winds on Sunday here. 45 to 50-knot winds south-southwest, and then gales from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Southeast coming up to 45 knots for Bristol Bay, and small craft advisories for Kodiak Island. And the Aleutians, eastern Aleutians tomorrow, 30 to 35 knots southerlies, 11 to 18-foot seas. and then 35 to 45 knot winds for Adak and Atka, and then winds coming in around the backside of that system, 55 knots out of the northwest with 18-foot seas. And then for Sunday, west 40 to 45, big increase in the winds here. Central Aleutians, 55 to 65 knot winds, so hurricane force wind warnings in these zones on the north side there of the Aleutians. West-southwest, 60 knots with 47-foot seas for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, southeast winds at 30 with 7 to 10-foot seas. Minimum gales in the forecast for St. Lawrence Island, and small craft advisories on the high end there for the Pribilofs at 12-foot seas, east 30, 16-foot seas for the northern Bering Sea. And then for the outlook on Sunday, east 40 out of Norton Sound across St. Lawrence Island, increase to 45 knots here along the Yukon Delta coast, southeast 45 south of Nunivak Island, northwest 30 for the Pribilofs, northeast 45 for the northern Bering Sea. And the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, really light wind conditions, light westerly breeze at about 10. And then the central coast, southeast 15, increasing to 20 on the west side, Cape Beaufort on down to Wales, southeast 30 knots, 12 to 14-foot seas. And small craft advisories holding those areas there for Sunday as well, from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, east-southeast 25 to 30, east 20 on the central and west coast, staying light, but now out of the east here on the eastern coastline. And for tonight, again, snow continues here over the southeast coast with a mixture of conditions down to the south, especially out toward the south coastline, Prince of Wales Island area. And then those strong winds in northern Link Canal and the northern areas here. Slowly, high wind warning ends early this evening, actually at 6 p.m. for Valdez, as the winds slowly diminish. Also the same pattern, slowly diminishing winds for south central Alaska, Kodiak Island. Clear, cold over the interior, and big storm moving into the Bering Sea. Rages on Sunday.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.